Hi, my name is Mocha. I'm the blonde from Coding Blonde, and today we're talking about education technology. I've interviewed Dr. Christian, who's a medical educator in Australia and a published research scientist. He's received national and international awards for his teaching and learning. He's a developer and a coder, and also is super passionate about using technology to enhance student experience. And guess what? He's also a fellow YouTuber. So I will leave a link to his channel right here. He uses the latest technologies like VR, AR, 3D printing to enhance his students' experience, and I can't wait for you guys to see how he does it. Hi Christian, how are you?
Hi Masha, great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm very, very excited for you to show my viewers what you've been working on and all these cool devices that you were just playing with right before it started.
It's been fun. They've been useful as well in teaching and learning.
So let's jump straight into it, in fact. So what do you teach and how do you teach it? Just so that everybody understands.
So look, I'm an academic. I'm a scientist by trade. I used to be a school teacher years and years ago. But my role now is in medicine. So I teach, I'm actually one of the program leads, the Scientist and Scholar theme lead, teaching all the scientists and all the science content across our 5 years of medicine. So that's immunology, anatomy, pharmacology, just overseeing that and working in a curriculum, a sort of curriculum development. And one of the things we've found, particularly in anatomy, is that medicine used to be taught we call it didactic. You'd stand at the front and just speak, or huge number of students in a room. The problem is that the human body's different. The human body's 3D, and there's a greater expectation now, not just in medicine, but all courses, to understand content differently. The amount of knowledge out there in the world is huge and growing every day. And so we're now, as university educators and academics, we're having to teach students in a different way, teaching them using technology in a way, but teaching them about critical thinking, teaching them about how they can absorb and understand information. So technology has been useful for a range of things, helping us understand the human body, but also helping us teach in a modern sort of environment for a modern individual, diverse student. So we've really enjoyed it, and it's been helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like you're using really, really cool and really cool technology that's just at the forefront of development. So VR, AR, all that stuff. Why do you think that it's very important to use that kind of technology when it comes to education?
So I've found it's really empowered me as an educator. So we learned coding a couple of years ago. We've got a team of us, 2 clinical doctors and myself, and we said, let's go and learn to code. And we put all of our eggs in one basket and learned JavaScript pretty much as well as we can. The problem with the HoloLens now, and Unity is now removed JavaScript support, so it's now all C#. So in the last 6 months having to relearn C# and get back into that. But it enables us to teach differently. It's no longer that appropriate to stand at the front of a big auditorium and just orate and just speak, which means we no longer call ourselves teachers, we now use the term educator. Because a good chunk of our curriculum is, there's still lectures going on, but it's also online. Students are requesting extra content. There are better ways to teach than just simply speaking to people. And so technology has allowed us to do that, to get away from that reliance upon oration and just speaking and into more individualized and engaging experiences. And in a class of 100 plus, you just can't get that individual support, individual help, whereas you can in technology. So by putting in, for example, yourself into VR. So the differences as I see them, VR we use these Oculus Rifts a lot, and the Vive as well. But the thing with VR in a noisy and busy classroom is it's somewhat sensory deprivation. Everything is in that zone. You're completely blocked out. So you can be in a busy class and you put it on and it's just you and that model, you and the human body, you and the skeleton, the skeletal system. And so we design all these apps what I'm doing is 6-minute little lessons on each part of the body where you can put it on and just be there with the heart or there with the brain and learn and understand it. The problem with VR though is that it also blocks you out. It's very hard. It's an individualized experience, but some students say, well, I like to write as I'm learning. I like to use different sort of ways, see what's going on around me, or I get dizzy, I get a bit of cyber sickness. So it's really useful for short-term activities, but I find in the long term, these aren't very good replacements for learning, they're good supplements. So we'll teach, go and do a bit of VR, and then come back to the teaching again. So the other thing then has been augmented reality. So virtual reality, yep, is great to block out and go inside structures. When we're learning about the outside, such as the brain, we use a lot of these. So augmented reality, I'll show you a little app that I made. I wonder if this is going to work. So here's an example of one of the lessons on the brain. We actually did this one yesterday. So it brings up the screen. Will this actually work? And then these are just 3D printed blocks that we make with just random colors on it. And that brings up,
Ooh.
Is that working? Brings up a little brain in front of you, and you can hold it and move it, and it's upside down. And the good thing is the point of these is that they're interactive. And the problem now is that, how am I going to be interactive? Hang on, put it there. Will that work? There we go. You can touch and you can remove layers. Guessing what I'm doing. Anyway, you can interact with the model, you can remove the layers. There's a little lesson there that runs, it's me talking, but the little 6-minute lessons, 7-minute lessons, which go in the background. Little bits highlight as you learn about it. Let's pause that. We tend to have a lot of our... So AR's good for surface anatomy, and this is something different. So an example of where it's really useful is we learn from cadavers in class, and these are, real humans don't have their bodies. And the thing is, you can get down to something like the brain and get into it, but you can't see the brainstem. Yet that's where the process of sleep comes from, the urination, respiration, a lot of these important facets. So understanding it from a cadaver or a real model isn't that useful, and it's hard to teach. So students will be doing a bit of a brain anatomy, and they can go to the side, pull this out for 6 minutes, and really get to zoom in on those little areas. Click, touch, interact, hear about it, little bits highlight, and then go back to the human body model, or back to the plastic model, or back to the lesson. So all of a sudden it means the limitations that we have as sort of, with the content that we've got, or with the human body specimens we've got, all the plastic models are completely augmented by this stuff, by the technology. And people get a little bit like, oh, you're replacing cadavers, you're replacing learning about humans with technology. Not at all. We're supplementing. And it's quite important to us that we're doing that. It's important that technology isn't yet ready to replace teaching. It's something which is there to help supplement and augment and help learning. Students can pause and unpause and move things around. So that's been useful. Other little things as well, we use these Oculus Go's. I've actually only got this week. This is a new one. So we're starting to get sort of into mobile, easier, simpler VR. But the good thing about these is they're a bit cheaper, a bit more accessible for the students. And I've got about 10 of these Gear VRs. The problem is they only work on Samsung phones. But the students who bring their Samsung phones in give us these little Gear VRs. But the trick with VR is it's not just about the visual, you've got to be interacting with it. So always having a controller. So the idea behind VR is that all your senses are in that zone. So you move the controller away, it's just a big TV screen. So that's something useful, is having that interactivity and engagement. See, technology in education is going a bit in two directions. It's moving into either enhancing the offline learning experience. This is things like MOOCs, massive open online courses. So there's about 81 million students enrolled in MOOCs. That number's a bit weird because a lot of people just enroll and then drop out. Like I've enrolled in a few that are free and then you never actually do them. So it's either way. There's a lot of students seeking this out. There's about 9,500 MOOCs around the place. There's a big push by universities, institutions and online courses to move into this area. And so we're using technology a lot in class, but then on the other hand of the spectrum, there's technology being used out of class. And it becomes a little bit interesting that EdTech is, I guess, benefiting both. Have you done a MOOC before? Have you ever enrolled in any MOOCs?
Yes.
Who was that?
A couple. That was through Coursera. Yeah.
Through Coursera.
I did neuromarketing through Coursera.
Why did you enroll in that and not go onto campus, onto an on-campus experience?
Because I wanted to supplement my marketing studies, and that sounded like a cool course by a university that I didn't have access to at the time, because that university was in a different country.
Okay. You found you learned, it was useful for learning? It was helpful?
Yeah.
So this is, when we speak about ed tech, I always wonder, are we talking about the technology to enhance, in class with teachers or the technology to get students away from teachers and away from class. And it's an interesting side. I'm very biased I'm very biased towards the technology that helps us in class. So if you're doing a Coursera course, yes, you could use VR, but you couldn't really have access to the devices and the equipment. So all the technology that we use is very much enhancing the in-class experience. 3D printing as well. So things like this is a 3D printed brain. These are really nice. So all of a sudden we've got access to technology and resources that help us teach person to person. The problem then is that the technology is also taking students away from the classroom, outside. Your example's perfect. Look, I couldn't do it. I was unable to go onto campus, and I see the appeal anyway, even for undergrads or school leavers. You can sit at home, you can learn from home, but what you don't get then is that sort of individual instruction. And it's a bit of I'm not sure whether to be worried or not as an academic, as a lecturer. Should we be worried about these students moving into MOOCs and getting away from the classroom, and yet we're so passionate about that hands-on teaching? The Australian government, actually, there's a real push into MOOCs. The Australian government have a plan to get 110 million students into Australian universities by 2025, which actually means MOOCs. It means off-campus learning. We can't have 100 million people in the few universities that we have. And so there's this big government international push into getting students off campus. And I guess the way to respond to that is just do better on campus teaching. So if I get up in front of a class and talk for 2 hours, that's actually better recorded. You can pause it, you can watch it later, have a glass of wine, watch it from bed with your dog and your cat. So I see the appeal of that, which means now that as educators on campus, if students are coming in and they're with us on campus, then we need to provide something that's individual. Something that gives them that chance to communicate, to ask questions in real time, live. And this actually is probably in the background, the stimulus behind using these sorts of technologies. Let's maximize your learning hands-on. And so 6 minutes in VR to then come out and talk about it, and if something what we're doing, we're meaning while you're on campus, you're getting all these different ways of learning and interacting. So that's where I've found the technology very, very, very useful. And I think student time now with us as lecturers on campus is gold. People, they get up, they could drive an hour, they could be on the train, they've got to have a shower and come in for a tutorial or a lesson. We really need to represent and make sure that that's worthwhile doing. Otherwise, what's happening is in the classes where that's not going on, students are just watching it from home. They're watching recorded lectures and they're missing out on all that chance for individual hands-on learning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a very, very interesting way of thinking about that. I actually didn't think about that myself. So yeah, that explains a lot about why you're developing so much stuff. And I love that AR, augmented reality brain projections. Those are awesome.
I like it.
I wish I had those. Because I studied psychology as my first year of my undergrad, and I remember these cuts of brains, and we had to remember all of the different parts. If I had augmented reality, I would have learned it so much faster.
Well, they're all 2D. It's all 2D drawings. I'm a very bad drawer. I'm much better at modeling and coding than I am at drawing. So maybe that's why I can't draw a brain in 3D, so AR helps that. The last thing that we use is HoloLens. This is only recently. I've got some more coming. I ordered some more yesterday. Developer kit, so they're still very much in development, but we used these again yesterday. The problem with this is it's beautiful to get inside models, but it blocks everything out and you can't write, you can't take notes, you can't interact with the lecturer, so you kind of go off in your own little world for 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes. Whereas this gives us all the benefit of the VR, but also you can see through it and we can actually connect with each other and I can see what the student's looking at. There's little lessons in it. It's a little bit tricky with the voice activation, but I think this actually, the reason that we've moved into HoloLens now, or I've started coding for this the last few months, has been that it just fills that gap. A lot of this technology we're using, not for the gimmicky wow, we're using it for the necessity. I think we need to engage students more. We need to give them that individualized experience, and we need to find a way in which they can see objects in 3D. If I can't draw, then I have to use tech. Silicon models and technology to show that brain in space, or show that skull or that spine. And so this actually is a way that I think it's been tricky learning a whole new coding language just to work on the HoloLens, C#. But now that we've got it, it's something which does sort of fill that gap. And I think we're going the right way about it in terms of we're not just using tech to use tech. It's like, okay, we've identified an area of need. Students like the VR, but they want to write and they want to see what's going on. And this kind of fills that need, that mixed reality. So I'm very, very excited about the potential for where this is going to end up in terms of what happens with the HoloLens. Hopefully it'll come out again. They've skipped version 2. I think it might be coming out next year. But it's something which sort of works in our educational context. I will say, I proceed with caution. When you were going through school, how was your experience with EdTech? It's not been good in the past.
No, not really. No.
See, education technology has gone through these hypes and then fizzled and flopped consistently. Mm-hmm. Australia by 2012 had more computers than schools in students more computers than students in schools.
Oh, wow.
And throwing technology and throwing computers at students didn't help achievement in any way. So what were we doing? There's this big sort of massive hype in EdTech and then flopping. I think 1928 was the very first teaching machine, which was invented, where they sort of said, oh look, we're now going to teach with this machine, and then you just never hear of it again. So how is this different? And this is something which people are right to be skeptical. Why use EdTech after years of failures? And I don't think was there anything in your high schooling that you found was amazing for learning in regards to technology?
I don't think so, no. It was just laptops, I guess. We didn't have any software that enhanced the experience.
So throwing computers and tech at students doesn't seem to help. But I think it's different. I think all of a sudden, like, you look at the companies involved in these technologies, and they're big. Facebook owning Oculus, Microsoft with the HoloLens, Samsung with their Gear VR, which they're losing a bit of support for. But they're retracting a bit of support, it seems. But either way, these are big companies putting billions in, and this hasn't happened before. And I feel like for the HoloLens to fail, or the Oculus to fail, or things, it's actually, there's billions invested, and there wasn't in the past. And I know these aren't specifically for EdTech, they're kind of semi-gaming, but in terms of technology used in class, I feel like these have a better backing. They're better, more serious technologies backed by billionaires and big companies. And so perhaps these are here to stay. After that, generations of flops in EdTech, and EdTech was a big word when I was in primary school. We were using computers and learning about floppy disks, and it was, and nothing has really come from it. I don't think I can ever look back and say, yeah, I learned really well from that. But now, hopefully, students can look back and say, yeah, I actually learned in that 3D environment. So I proceed with caution to use technology in the classroom after generations of it being a flop, but maybe it's different.
And I love your approach to it, trying something out, seeing what works, what doesn't, and understanding, for example, that you need to be able to take notes during watching the presentation.
Yeah.
Say. You need to be able to take notes. You don't want the student to be isolated in this 3D environment. So it's awesome that you're approaching from this kind of almost design thinking perspective when it comes to solving actual real life problems. And my next question for you is kind of building on all of that really cool stuff that you just showed. And oh my God, I really wish I was in your class. I'm serious.
It doesn't replace teaching. It's just on the side. It's extra little things, which is.
But that's what spices it up. Makes it more fun and probably hooks students to the topic even more. So, what do you think the future of education is going to be? And you kind of brought up the debate between, is it going to be all online? Is it going to be in person? What is your prediction for the future in terms of this?
I'm a little bit worried about it. The big push to get students off campus online to learn is massive. I mean, if we all of a sudden had 1 million students, you could enroll 1 million students in one online course. Bang! And they're paying, and they're doing it and they're enjoying it and there's not that much expense. I can see the benefit and the appeal for governments, institutions, universities and websites. And it also helps. It helps people that don't have regular schedule. It helps parents achieve education and get good outcomes. And someone like Coursera does have really good stats, actually. They did a Harvard Business Review, some of the members of Coursera recently, talking about who benefits from MOOCs and showing that actually people are able to then get jobs and they wouldn't have otherwise gone to university. Like yours, it's extra learning. I spend a lot of time on things like, I've been learning photography recently, and so I go online and do little MOOC courses, sort of tertiary level courses, which are fantastic. So there's definitely benefits to that. And does the benefit then of coming on campus outweigh the benefits of learning from home in your own pace? At the moment it does. There's the group work, the hands-on learning from others, use of modern resources, use of real life situations, getting to know people. In medicine, you couldn't learn online and then the first person you ever deal with is a real patient. It would be very tricky. We have to give them the cues and the understandings and that ability to take history and to speak to people and communicate and have empathy for people. So there's a lot there that you need to do in person, and interpersonal, intrapersonal skills, which you just can't do online. So I guess the thing with modern education is, at the moment, it's moving towards online learning, which is very content-based. But there's going to have to be a time when employers say, we want graduates who have intrapersonal skills. We want graduates that have ethical thought and action, ability to communicate, abilities to critical think. And you can't really learn that by yourself in a room online. So you can get the general content, and at the moment that is being valued, but there's no the financial incentive isn't there. Teaching amazing critical thinking skills is great, and some students get why they're learning it, some don't. Sometimes it's an uphill battle. It's like teaching statistics to science students. They don't want to learn it, but they have to, and years later they come back and say, gee, I'm glad you studied that, but I hated it at the time. That they don't, there's this misconception that university is still simply knowledge. Give me the content I need to learn, when actually it's also development. And I don't know. I've been watching this with a weird mix of, will there still be jobs for lecturers 30 years from now, like there are today? And I think there's still that value. As more and more competition comes in the market, there's a greater expectation for more skills than just knowledge. And I'm still not convinced that online courses where you never come into campus can provide very good activities and development of skills outside the content. So hopefully we'll still be able to keep working and using cool skills. But I think as lecturers, we need to upskill ourselves all the time. Learning coding for me was really quite empowering in what I wanted to do. And I've done other things as well, like I make little computer games. I've started to release a few resources, so I made all for free. I don't charge for anything. Making computer games for students, then releasing them on Steam and Linux and other things. Making little resources, the VR apps. If any universities want to use them, or have Oculus, or have Samsung devices, or any Android, I'll just email the files across. So I like sharing this stuff because I think in general it's something that we can do as universities, educators on campus, which is different and beneficial. 3D printing's also been really, really useful. I showed a few before. I mean, look at that we can get straight from scans into the little pelvis, and we can build up stuff. This is fun. It's still like, I pass these around class and it's like, wow, 3D printing. And the students are like, oh, it's just like a semi donut. Yeah, 3D printing. Welcome to the future. But it just means it's that hands-on. We haven't got to be you can be a bit rough with it. You haven't got to always be like, when we have the pots and the real specimens, we're very careful. Whereas you 3D print a skull or a brain, and you can throw it around a little bit and really point to it and show it off. One of our students is a fantastic painter, and one day I'm like, can you please take this home and paint the little regions? So I found this as well, that now it's no longer me standing there with in a lecture theatre. I've got 3D printed models I can pass around. We can talk about them. I've got things like the students will. Here's an example. This works on any phone. Oh, it's a gross brain, I'm sorry. But we can label the brain and then scan this, and up comes an AR of the brain in front of it and see if your labeling's correct. So we still have to print out and hand out 2D, but it's a way to get it into 3D environments by using AR.
just to sort of check your answers and see the objects in 3D space, which has been great in science, but also fantastic in architecture, all the healthcare professions.
That sounds awesome. And I guess I'm sure there are some people watching this right now thinking, I would love to get my hands dirty in education technology and are feeling inspired by your examples. What would you recommend to those people who want to start in education technology?
Yep.
Where should they start?
So I started through necessity. I couldn't draw, and I had to show 3D objects in space. And I couldn't do it myself. Textbooks were illustrations, and it didn't work. The actual wow factor and the gimmicky stuff got in the way a little bit. So it was a few years ago, I think the Oculus Rift came out as a consumer device, and about 2 weeks later it was in our class. I was using it in class. So all of our health science, medicine, exercise science, biomed students were all using it in my classes, just as part of labs. Not every week, but every now and then. And there was that wow factor. And they put on their headset and they were wow, but they weren't learning. They were like, oh, look at this is cool. No, listen, stop and listen. And so the actual wow gimmicky stuff got in the way of learning, and I didn't like that as much. What's happened now is everyone's heard of VR for years. It's been spoken about, we know about it, we've all heard, most people have used it. It's a bit of the wow factor's gone. And they're now saying, well, if I'm going to put this headset on, I need a good quality experience. And so that was useful, that we actually found that the gimmicky wow, let's use tech, got in the way and was a negative. I know a lot of developers focus on, I want to be part of the next thing. This is the next biggest thing. Whereas I came at it very much from, oh, it's a shame this is new. We want to use this tech to learn. It's a shame that it's novel, a shame that it's new. That's going to distract people from what it is. So our aim was I needed a better way to present the information, and I couldn't do it myself, and so the technology was there out of necessity. And every weekend when I spend those hours developing the new apps for the HoloLens, this is because the students like VR but also want to write, and they want to, so I'm sort of working hard on the necessity side of it rather than the gimmicky fact. That's why we get to the new tech, and that's why it's sort of... I think that was the right way about it. And then also the reason I got into gamification was because students weren't doing the resources I was providing. So how do we do it better? How do I entice them better? So every bit of this tech has come out of necessity, rather than any other reason to jump into it. And I think that's been something useful. And I'm glad we did, because the gimmicky factor, like I said, has gone now, and people are expecting a good education experience, which you need to do from the start. Because that gimmicky wow effect only lasts about 6 months, and then it's old tech already.
Of course. Yeah, with the rate that everything is developing. Yeah, that's actually a very, very smart approach to things. What are you trying to enhance, and what problem are you trying to solve, and then seeing how this technology can solve it. And it's not about the wow factor. I agree. I would get distracted myself. I'd be like, oh my god, I just want to play with this thing all day long.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And it's hard work. It's many hours of getting it right and learning how to do what you want to do. I mean, even then, people come, oh, I want to make an app. Yeah, but I remember spending a whole day just on my Steam page or my Google Play, getting the right screenshots, getting the right sizes. Everything just seems to take a lot of time. Going through the different, because the minute you release overseas, any app, you've got to get sometimes approval from different countries, get copyright infringement stuff, education, any games have to go through all sorts of processes. There's so much paperwork that even once you finish the app, there's still that 3 or 4 months of work. And so it's hard, but I like that it's hard. It's hard enough to be inhibitory for a lot of people, which is a shame. But it's just saying, look, I want to get this out. For me, I want to share this. I want to make it available and public. And it costs a bit of money. You got to pay then to upload on the Microsoft Store, the Steam Store, the Google Play Store, and all these things, and code, host a website that has it all on there. But it's the point that we're trying to teach, and it's an effective way to teach. I mean, make money from it if you want, of course. Yeah, please do. My interest is sharing. So if I make something $1 to buy, and it means some people don't get it and don't learn from it, then it's sort of gone against my ethos of what I'm trying to do. But it is it's tricky, but it's fun, and it's quite rewarding to sit back and see your own apps being used at other universities and internationally, and so it's nice to make a difference. And that's one thing that, as a lecturer, we can genuinely make differences to people all over the world now. That's sort of the reason I started the YouTube channel, is how do I, teach people or engage people in sort of pretty, at university level human body content outside of where I am. And I think the technology's also enabled that I can share these apps quickly, and it's very beneficial, whereas I can't share me standing in front of a lecture talking for 2 hours because who wants to watch that? So it's helped with that dissemination a little bit as well, and I've really enjoyed platforms like YouTube and very recently Instagram as ways to sort of show what we do and engage students and realize and try and get that message across that being on campus doing stuff like lab research but also using tech is quite beneficial to learning and enhancing that. So I've got to start doing a lot more of that. Images and videos on campus. Look at what it's like if you come onto campus and learn. Because I genuinely feel like that's something that's worth doing, and I think we should all start as educators competing against the online learning and MOOCs by saying, would you also consider coming on campus and learning on campus, because here are the benefits. It's fun and engaging and whatnot as well. So there's a lot of benefits I find in using the tech, and I think it's a different style of tech than it used to be, and it's developing fast, but it's useful. We've done research on this as well, so we've got some papers out. We found that one of our studies that virtual reality wasn't better for learning than just us talking or lectures, but it was different. It was a better experience. Students enjoyed it more. So, do you have to learn through VR? No, absolutely not. But you can learn through VR, and it's different. And so, and that's one of the things that research does. We say, oh, VR's the best. Did the research? No, it was the same. But it's different.
It's more fun.
It's more fun. That if you're going to spend 10 hours learning the anatomy of the skull, doing it in different modes, different ways of learning is beneficial and helpful. And anatomy in the past has been a subject where there was 50% fail rates. It was inhibitory. Students couldn't get through anatomy, and now using the tech, it's become fun and engaging and interactive and relevant to the real world, which is 3D. So it's something in that particular field and other fields, it's been really, really useful.
I am very excited to see where this takes us, and
so am I.
I'm definitely going to check out your games and leave them in the description, and also your YouTube channel in the description, because I think that this is just such a revolution to how we use technology in education. Thank you so much for sharing your story with my followers and my viewers. I'm very excited to publish this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been fun. It's enjoyable. And I love your channel. It's been great. Everyone like and subscribe. Coding Blonde. It's a really good channel, and I love the coding. And the world's going towards technology, and people, everyone's got these high tech devices, and I'm telling you, my students, you give them the game, and they've never used, the arrow pads. They've never used any sort of. They don't understand what's happening. You go to an Apple store now, and everything gets fixed for you. And so there's not that critical thinking around technology, and it's something that we all need. And you see, I was a bit lucky that our generation grew up with things not working. The old computers just never worked. It was always critical thinking and trying to get it working, and we were used to that. And that's something that my code never works the first couple of days. Half the time on Google trying to work out what's going on, half the time here. But it's something that understanding that technology and the underlying code, the underlying issues, that critical thinking around how things work and devices is something useful, because we're so reliant upon devices, but we don't always understand them. And I encourage any students, anyone, to get more into that process, more into that, how do I do some basic coding? Because it just helps you understand everything from your phone to your computer to your microwave now and your fridge and your TV. And we're all using these devices, but we don't always understand them. So it's something which is putting some effort into learning these things is beneficial for life in this technological enabled age.
Yeah, that's why I've started my channel, because I also want to understand how things work, and this is a good excuse to explore all of the different areas. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving me this interview, and I can't wait to share this.
It's been great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Christian. This was awesome and super insightful into the future of what education could look like and how this technology can really enhance the experience in the classroom. I love it. So if you guys who are watching this want to follow Dr. Christian, make sure you do so. I will link his YouTube channel and his Instagram below, as well as the game that he was talking about. So you can find all of that in the description, and also there will be a link to his YouTube channel up here. Yay! I hope that you guys enjoyed this and that you're as inspired about the future of education as I am. I'm just very excited to see where this world is gonna go when it comes to education and where my potential future children will study and how they will study. So yeah, it's very exciting. And yeah, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well if you're new here, and follow me on other social media at Coding Blonde. Have a wonderful time of the day you're currently experiencing. Bye.